All right, so I'm seeing everybody connecting, and we do have it set up so that you aren't able to unmute or show your video at this time, just to keep the screen from being crowded while we record this, so those who aren't able to join us this morning can watch it later. I'm Jill Raycroft from the Belleville Chamber of Commerce, passing it on to my co-hosts.
I'm Suzanne Andrews. I'm the CEO at the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce.
And I'm Duarte Silva, the CEO at the PEC Chamber of Commerce.
And we have our MP, Ryan Williams, and MPP, Tyler Allsopp.
Good morning, everyone.
So thanks for joining us on the Friday of Small Business Week. And many of you have probably participated in one of our virtual roundtables before. This is, I think, the fourth year we've done it, considering that we started in 2020 during COVID. And it has been a really effective way for us to find out issues that are facing our community that we need to take forward to both the provincial and the federal level. If you have a question, if you've submitted one in advance, we will be addressing those first. But if you see a question, or if you have a question, please enter it into the chat. Any other comments, Suzanne or Duarte, before we get going?
No, this is a meeting, a Zoom meeting, so you control your own views. So if you want to kind of see the close-up of the speakers, just make sure you change your view to speaker view, and that way it'll kind of just give you a more focused view of the meeting today. And we look forward to your questions.
Let's get going.
Okay, do I want to start?
Yes,
well,
please.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining this morning. This is great. First of all, happy Small Business Week to everyone. We want to celebrate small businesses. You're the heart of our economy. 97% of jobs are created by small businesses, and we know how important it is in the Quinte region. And the heart of that is the voice of business. And I want to give a big shout out to the Chamber of Commerce here, who have always acted regionally. When we talk about Bay of Quinte, it's always been the individual chambers who represent this great region of Bay of Quinte. And Jill, of course, who's here, Duarte from Prince Edward County, and Suzanne from Quinte West. So thank you for all you do and for being the voice of business. And of course, looking forward to tonight when we have the Quinte Business Achievement Awards. And it's always an incredible night to honor local businesses, the people who take it all on the line. They take all the risk to create jobs and to ensure we have a good, active community and great goods and services and tourism and manufacturing and everything that we really need here to be thriving, to provide good jobs and good paychecks for Canada. And I know that today, Tyler Allsopp, excited to be here with Tyler. Congratulations again, Tyler, for representing us in Toronto and in Ontario. And today I want all the hard questions to go to Tyler. I think that's how we want it. I'll handle all the easy ones today, right, Tyler?
Well, sure. Just for you, Ryan.
So, we know that we're right now in a Canadian economy that's stuck. We know we have certain issues. Interest rates are going down, not because of the things we've asked, which is lower government spending and better productivity, but the fact that our economy is stalling, and we see that. We see the lowest GDP in all of the per capita in all the G7. We're seeing increased taxes. We know we have increased capital gains taxes that have come into effect. The carbon tax is set to increase another 30% this April 1st coming up. And we see a big problem with the economy with lack of competition. So we have massive monopolies and oligopolies that dominate the landscape, making it more expensive for everyone. And that affects small business in profound ways. When we're having an economy that's not seeing as much revenue, my role right now is critic of international trade. And also I've retained my role somehow of competition. They're both big files, but we really look at what the last CUSMA round of negotiations did for Canada. And it made us from the #1 trading partner of the US to the #3. Mexico's #1, China's #2 for the US. We're #3. It's not allowed more of our businesses to find the product regulatory measures that allow us to get into more American businesses. It has allowed less venture capital in Canada. And when I talk about competition, the big one that really affects small business is the lack of competition in banking that has really tightened up the credit market. I know Ruth Eswick is on the call from the Quinte Home Builders. And the problem we have with obviously not building enough homes, one of the biggest problems besides lack of skilled trades is the tightening up of the credit markets, which means that home builders who have inventories can't go to banks and get more money or credit to build more homes. I know that Mr. Allsopp will talk about what the province is doing for homes, and that's something we really need to work on. But when it comes to what we need to be doing as a whole for Canada, it's making sure that we have enough credit, that builders can get the skilled trades they need to ensure that they are building homes. And that's the biggest crisis we have in Canada right now, our housing crisis. We had some announcements from the government yesterday on immigration and tightening up immigration, but the floodgates have already been opened. We have far too many people in the country for how many homes we build. We only built 230,000 homes in Canada last year when we let in over 1.4 million people. Do the math. We have too many people for too few homes. And what happens when you're not building enough homes is we have a massive crisis where rents go up. The average rent price is well over $2,000 here in Canada right now, which is way too high. And we have a problem where we have people who, if they don't have a parent who owns a home or they don't own a home, they will probably never own a home. And that's a big problem. When we talk about taxes, capital gains and the carbon tax, but taxes as a whole are high for businesses. We're really keeping attention to what's going to help happen south of the border in the next 2 weeks. I was at a US-Canada trade lecture last night, and it had the former ambassadors, both of them from Clinton and from Trump in Ottawa, talking about what's going to happen if either Harris or Trump can come in. And believe it or not, as much as we would hope for one president or the other, neither of them are going to be good for Canada. Both of them are going to look at increased tariffs. Both of them are going to ensure that they lower their competitive tax rates. And what that means for Canadian businesses, well, a lot of Canadian businesses right now look south of the border, look to Texas, and they look to Florida because their income tax or their corporate tax rates are way lower than ours. Trump has promised 15%. We're well over 30% here in Canada. So half the tax rates, that's going to drive business south. We have to look at that. So the solutions we look at are threefold. Number one, we look at better trade deals for Canada to ensure that we're selling more stuff, ensuring that we have better deals that make sure Canadian businesses come ahead. We have incredible things in Canada we need to sell, including our critical minerals, our oil and gas, our products. We do produce green here in Canada. We're doing great projects in hydrogen and others. We have to ensure we're growing that. I've talked a lot about, I know we have some car manufacturers in the area, putting more tariffs on China to ensure that their unfair, uncompetitive practices don't allow their products into Canada, that Canadian workers come ahead, and we work closer with our American counterparts to ensure that we have better products here and a better competitive advantage to keep our car manufacturers growing and our food manufacturers growing, and to ensure that we have good food processing sector that is growing here in the Quinte region. Two, we're going to decrease taxes when we get in. We're going to axe the carbon tax. Just a side note, the city of Belleville will have a report come out Monday that shows for 2024, almost $600,000 of taxpayer money is going into paying the carbon tax a year without a rebate. That's going into property taxes. Our residents in this region and our businesses cannot afford any more taxes. We'll be axing the carbon tax, but we have to also decrease the income taxes and the corporate tax rate and the capital gains tax. And those will be things that we need to do to make our businesses more competitive. The third thing we have to be doing is creating more competition. So my bill in front of third reading in Parliament now is to make sure we have open banking in Canada. Open banking means that we have more fintechs or more solutions for Canadians, businesses and consumers that can save them money. Wealthsimple right now is for one example, is a competitor in a fintech that could offer Canadian businesses up to 4% interest rates on their floating cash rate. How incredible would that be to get that kind of return? That's what open banking does. It gives more solutions. It brings competition to banking, and that's one way we can get that through. The other one that we're working on is telecoms, how to get cell phones for businesses and for the public down to $15 a month or even $40 a month, which the Americans get and they enjoy, and we don't have because we don't have competition. And of course, the last thing we're going to do is ensure we work with the provinces to build more homes, ensure we have homes for our employers. The number one complaint we've heard from businesses across Canada is they can't get new employees in across the nation because they can't afford to live here. We need to make sure housing is affordable. We have to make sure when we're doing immigration, we tie the lack of skilled jobs and trades to immigrants and to housing. And if we don't do that, we have to bring immigration down so that we can get Canadian workers through the system. We can make sure we afford homes for everyone. That's what we're working on. So making sure we create good environments for small businesses. Small businesses need to be able to expand, to grow, and to provide good jobs for Canadians. So happy to be here. Happy to take your questions.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. And now, Tyler, over to you. We look forward to getting an update from you now.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, and good morning. I'm very happy to be ending Small Business Week with the chambers from all over our region, Belleville, Prince Edward County, and Quinte West. And thank you so much to Jill, Suzanne, and Duarte for hosting this event, and everyone that's tuned in. I hear there's over 60 people on the call, which is fantastic. Really appreciate your interest and the opportunity to speak to you guys today about some of the things that the provincial government is doing as it relates to business, making us more competitive, keeping taxes low, and creating an environment where businesses can thrive. And that's really the key. As you guys know, it's been a busy week for me, but it's also been an honor to be sworn in the legislature and walked in for my first week. My family was able to come join me. I know that Monday was a big day for me. But it was also a big day for my wife, Jennifer, who had to wrangle 3 kids under 5 onto a train and through a subway station. So very much appreciative of the effort that she puts in, all the things that she does for our family as well. But since getting to Toronto, I've been able to sit on a number of committees, both the Interior and Social Policy and also the Finance Committee. Joined in several debates, rise and question period to support local tourism operators, and the experience that I had at Elevate Plus graduation about a week and a half ago at Loyalist College. Which is a tremendous program in our community that helps people who face obstacles in employment, whether it be through drug addiction, mental health issues, contact with the criminal justice system, and many other obstacles, to get the training they need over 4 weeks in class and 4 weeks on the job site to get ready for a career in our booming manufacturing sector. And as everyone on this call knows, our community is home to some of the largest manufacturers in the world. When you look at Kellogg's and Procter & Gamble, warehousing companies like Amazon, manufacturers like Vision Transport, a lot of great manufacturing going on in the Bay of Quinte region, and we're looking to continue to grow that through specific investments from the provincial government. Now, on this call, I'm sure everyone knows my background is in small business. I ran Doug's Bicycle for over 11 years, which also helped me get started in my political career. And running a small business, as all of you know, is going to be something that's very difficult to do, especially a seasonal business. And it's something that really takes all of your effort. All the hours are yours to set. You're working late into the night. You're working early in the morning. And it's something that's on your mind all the time. So my heart goes out to all the small business owners out there who really are the lifeblood of our community. And it is a bit of a political cliche that small business is the backbone of our economy, but it's a cliche because it's true. There's over 400,000 small businesses across Ontario that employ over 2 million people. So very important to make sure that we're doing all that we can to support those small businesses, not only in terms of their employment, bringing in more revenue, trying to get the small business tax rate down to make them more competitive, but also because these are great outlets for people in terms of their own creativity and their own passion and being able to express that in the community. So very important that we support all of our small businesses. Now, I ran to join the PC government because I know it's committed to reducing red tape and creating an environment for businesses to grow and thrive. In turn, this success delivers good jobs and prosperity in communities and pays for the social programs that we rely upon. And what we've seen from this government is that they are working for workers and they're also open for business. And as I talked about earlier, it's really about creating that environment where businesses can thrive. And a big part of that is the fact that this PC government since 2018 has not raised a single tax. And I know that's something that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, but is so important to make sure that we have an environment that allows businesses to be competitive and allows consumers to keep more money in their pockets so that they have more disposable income to spend out in the marketplace. And that really helps stimulate our economy locally, provincially, and nationally as well. What we've seen is that with electricity savings, red tape reduction, and lower taxes, we've delivered about $8 billion in cost savings for businesses, and nearly half of that has been for small businesses. And one support that may interest you, and certainly was important in my business as we tried to modernize ourselves and be more competitive in a global landscape, is the Digitization Competence Center, which helps small businesses transition to that digital landscape and get a greater presence online, be able to start posting all of their products, and really fulfilling that need to ship products around the globe. And what I found in my own business is some of the things that we're selling online were sort of odd things that maybe had hung around for a couple years, that people were having difficulty finding and that had been stuck, on our shelves or in back storage rooms. And we started shipping them to South Africa, to Germany, to the East Coast of Canada, to Vancouver. So having your products available online, making them accessible to the marketplace, and being able to ship them has been a big deal for my small business before I sold it back in July. And I think it's going to make a big difference for a lot of small businesses across our community. This government also continues to invest in job creation through programs like Starter Company Plus and Summer Company, while encouraging entrepreneurship among youth with Futurepreneur programs. And our Small Business Center is available to support that with counseling and advice, and is connected to the federal level with Trendval and PELA Community Futures. So a lot of great programs are available to small business owners across our community to help them thrive and make sure they have the resources they need to build on what they're already doing well and move towards the future in a very strong way, and in a way that allows their products to be more accessible across the world. Of course, we're also hard at work to address the labor challenges we face, and that comes through earlier career education and skilled trades programming. One of the things that we've done is bring the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program back all the way through to grade 9, so that more people can get into the trades easier and get that education while they're still in high school, so they're ready to hit the ground faster. That has been a huge part of what our government is doing to help the skilled labor shortage, as well as what we're seeing through the Skills Development Fund, which I referenced in relation to what's going on at Loyalist College and through Quinte Economic Development through Elevate Plus. But that's just one of the programs that we're funding through Skills Development to make sure that we are getting more people out into the trades, more people working in our community, helping to build all those homes that we need. And Ryan really hit the nail on the head. If we have an immigration system that is untethered from the amount of homes that we're building, you end up with a huge amount of demand with very little supply. So we need to bring both of those things into line by creating more supply, and we're helping to support that through the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund and also the Housing Enabling Infrastructure Fund as well, to support communities. Some of you may have seen the investment that we did a few weeks ago now into Prince Edward County, $18 million for their water treatment plant. We're going to continue with those types of investments to make sure that our communities have the support that they need to get shovels into the ground, to get the homes built, and to accomplish our goal of building 1.5 million new homes across Ontario, because it is important that everyone can realize the dream of home ownership. And when we talk about the difficulties and the barriers, Ryan had referenced that a lot of people, if their parents don't own a home or they don't already have a home, that they feel that they won't be able to get into the marketplace. About 2/3 of my generation is in that type of situation where they feel that they may never be able to own a home. And as someone who's 32 years old, that's absolutely unacceptable to me. It delays a lot of people from starting families. It delays a lot of people from building that equity that they'll eventually need either in retirement or in old age, when they may need to move into a home and get some support. If you don't have a home that you're then able to sell, it makes it very difficult to fund retirements, makes it very difficult to be able to move into retirement homes later on in life. So very important that we get those shovels in the ground, get the homes built, and we're doing everything we can with that funding to make sure that municipalities are able to do that, including the Building Faster Fund as well. We saw that Belleville was a recipient of $1.2 million for hitting their housing targets, which we then put into a pumping station to allow more homes to be built in that Loyalist secondary plan area. So a lot of crucial things going on surrounding home building, making sure we're building up that end of the economy and supporting our Quinte Home Builders Association as well. And Ruth is on the call, and thank you all for the great work that you're doing over there with QHBA. Now, larger businesses may also benefit from programs like the Eastern Ontario Development Fund or the Ontario Made Manufacturing Tax Credit. Both of those are available to larger businesses. I'd also point out the Eastern Ontario Development Fund can be used for smaller businesses when you're purchasing real estate. That's something that I was able to do with my business. We were able to buy a building and receive a substantial amount of the purchase price back. I believe it was about 20% in the form of a check, not a tax credit. So that's something to make sure you're looking into if you are looking at purchasing some real estate to help grow your business. You may be eligible for up to 20% of the purchase price back in the form of a check, which goes a long way in a small business to make sure that they're able to be competitive, bring on the staff they need, buy the products that they need to fill their storefront, and update their online presence as well. So lots of great things going on from a provincial standpoint. Very happy to be here today, and I'm looking forward to all of your questions.
So I see that there are a few questions that have been submitted, and I think we're going to go to the submitted questions first, and then we'll go to the ones in the chat. I'm going to just start with one that I think is for both Ryan and Tyler. And I'll just read it out to you. I think you'll know who this question has been submitted by once I read it out. While federal and provincial funding streams like the House Accelerator Fund, House Enabling Core Services Fund, and Housing Enabling Water Fund are crucial funding streams for the Bay of Quinte, the region's municipalities have had low success with approvals in initial application rounds. How will you work to ensure more Bay of Quinte applications are successful in securing funding? And what strategies will you implement or champion to address the infrastructure challenges and support the region's growing needs?
Okay, I don't mind starting that one. I think, look, we had one of all Eastern Ontario, the last round of accelerator funding, we had one municipality in all Eastern Ontario get approved, one. And we know the housing need. We know the housing need here. We know it in Prince Edward County. We know it in Quinte West. We know it in Belleville. We know it in Hastings County. They're all resubmitting, and we've been very vocal about the fact that it seems that funding's only been improved in ridings that either have high density or unfortunately were ridings perhaps where there's Liberal members. Let's just break this down. The housing is the single biggest crisis we have in Canada. There's no question. No other G7 nation has the lack of housing that we do in this country. And then in this region, we look at the need for that. And we know that Belleville was highlighted, but it's across the whole region in terms of what happens when you have a lack of housing, when you have that coupled with a severe opioid crisis. It's dire here. And so I look at projects, for instance, like the former Love Song project in Bloomfield, which is now the Pinecrest project. That should have been approved probably 6 or 7 years ago. Converting an older school into housing, we already had the infrastructure. The fact that that still is waiting for funding to me, and the fact that they've spent so much money on consultation dollars, so $200,000+ just to have consultants put together reports that the government needs. It's not okay. And I know that the latest round, Quinte West had one that was, and then Hastings County put that through, and that was, of course, denied. The Queen Elizabeth School project in Prince Edward County. These are all projects that should go through. So, first of all, we're looking at what needs to happen from the government, in terms of where funding needs to go. Our major projects will be to tie infrastructure dollars to municipalities getting permits and working with the provinces on that. I've been very vocal on what we need to do with the province as well. I think we need to be looking at how we go to the planning councils, how it's just so hard at all to get any building permits through, and how the government's funding affordable housing. Everything from vacant federal lands that just take too long to free up to have builders build homes. But we need to ensure that we have programs that work for municipalities, that if we say we have money, it's spread along, and to ensure that we'll fight hard to ensure that we get the housing needed in this region. And I said last year the number needed is close to 10,000 homes by 2035 in this region alone, of which we need about 1,500 to 2,000 of those homes to be affordable rental. We need rental housing, and we need a couple more projects like we've had with Shiloh House, where we have that transitional housing that gets people out of the shelters and into transitional housing where they can get support on mental health and on addiction counseling and on employment counseling. We need all of that. We need affordable market rent that is close to $900 to almost a maximum of $1,000. People can't afford that, and that's where Phil Spry and Altogether Housing have joined together to build those kind of units. They are part of the larger Hastings County, and I really commend Hastings County, the 7,000 homes in 7 years, but their plan is to build 400 of those. We need to be getting funding to those organizations. So I think it is that there's funding there, but it also is getting rid of the bureaucracy and ensuring that when we have ready build houses, when we have groups ready to build homes and projects like where Hastings County and others are ready to put that money into the pot, we need to ensure that those projects go further. A last idea that we had that I think is really important is if we've had builders like Phil Spry and Bob Cottrell put projects together, they've been successful, they should get a Nexus card that bypasses all of the bureaucracy and the red tape, and it gets them building homes. That would be, to me, a way to get them through the line, get them started, because they can get these projects started right away.
Great, and I think that Ryan covered a lot of great things in his answer. And I'll just point out a couple more. And certainly Ontario does have an infrastructure deficit in all of the 440 municipalities in Ontario, and that's something that's gone back decades and decades. And we've seen that previous governments have not been committed to building and building up the infrastructure that's needed to make sure that we can be building homes and improving our economy, because you can't do that without infrastructure. And that's something that I think often gets lost in the conversation, is that if you don't have sufficient capacity for water, sufficient capacity for sewer, sufficient capacity for electrical lines and things of that nature, you're not going to be able to build the homes that you need. You're not going to be able to bring in the manufacturing jobs that you need, and the whole economy will stagnate on that basis. So we've committed over $2 billion to the Housing Enabling Water Fund and the Housing Enabling Infrastructure Fund. And we continue to work towards that goal that I discussed earlier of building 1.5 million homes. And I think that there's a number of reasons why, sometimes we aren't as successful with those applications as we would like to be. And one of those is, I think, an issue that relates to communication. The municipalities that have done a really good job in terms of informing their local MPP of the applications that are going in. That way, the MPP can advocate on their behalf, make sure that the ministry knows that that application is going in, make sure that they understand why it's important, what the benchmarks are, and how we're going to use that application and that funding to make sure that we're successful in hitting our targets and growing our community is something that's really important. And, we've seen this just recently in Prince Edward County, as I referenced, with the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund money that they received, about $18 million. And that was a great example of communication through the MPP, working with the ministry, making sure that everyone is on board, everyone is bought in with the project, and that there's clear and defined outcomes of what we're going to do with that funding. And a really great story that's happened there. We also saw in Belleville, as I referenced, that $1.2 million to the Building Faster Fund for hitting our targets. And I'm going to be making sure that I'm spending the time with all of the mayors, all of the councils in the area, to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction and that we're working as a team collaboratively to make sure that the province understands what the needs are and how we're going to get where we're going with the funding that we'll be receiving. So I think that's a really crucial part of it, is that communication, that relationship building, so that we're presenting a united front to the province and able to move forward effectively. We've also, in 2022, Ontario more than doubled the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund allocation for municipalities, and they can decide how to use that funding on pressing projects and can stack it for up to 5 years. So that's something where if you're not getting the level of funding all in one chunk, you can take it, bank it for 5 years, build it up, and then use that for something that's going to be more impactful. One of the first things that I did as the new MPP was call all of the local mayors and discuss their OSIF funding that they just received. Great allocations. As we said, it had more than doubled since 2022. A lot of great projects on the go, and those funds go a long way in terms of making sure that municipalities can handle some of those critical infrastructure deficits that they have and continue to build our communities. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund also offers funding for rural municipalities to maintain key infrastructure. And we've been advocating to the federal government for more tri-level infrastructure programs to tackle major projects. This is something that was discussed during the campaign as it related to County Road 49. Working with the municipality, working with the federal level and the provincial level allows us to get some of those bigger projects done that would be too much of a burden on the taxpayers at any one level. But with a tri-level solution, we'll be able to move forward on those projects. And that's a really big one in terms of Prince Edward County, to make sure that they continue to receive the tourism that they have been, particularly from that eastern gateway. So tourists coming in from Quebec who are looking to spend the weekend at Sandbanks, who are looking to come to the wineries, to the local restaurants, do some shopping. We want to make sure that they feel comfortable doing that and that the road is in good repair. But we need everyone to be able to come together and move forward strongly on that. So work is being done there, but we want to work with QEDC and the municipalities to attract businesses and industry to support the tax base and possibly leverage some of Ontario's programs to do so. We've seen great success with that at a number of local businesses, including Sprague Foods, Quinte Wallen Trust, Kellogg's, where we've been able to make strategic investments to help with growth in those businesses, to bring more employees online, to increase the tax base, because every time that one of these large manufacturers expands the size of their building, that's more development fees, that's more long-term taxes for the region, which is great because it takes the burden off of individuals and homeowners, and is funded through that growth in manufacturing. So very important to make sure we're still doing that. And municipalities need to use the Planning Act tools at their disposal to forecast increased settlement and to ensure it helps pay for the infrastructure costs. Recent revisions to the provincial policy statement, the building code, etc., aim to provide direct support to growth, and that's something we'll be pursuing in our region as well, and I'll be working with all the municipalities on.
I just want to throw one more point. I think this is really relevant. You know, I know in Quinte West right now they're talking about the development to fee increase. That's a big issue right now. That's a big problem. And it's not just Quinte West. Toronto is increased from 2010 from 13,000 per a single dwelling to 141,000. That was a 993% increase. And Quinte West would be 150% increase. Councillor Carr and I used to debate this on Belleville Council all the time, that, you know, I would debate that growth should pay for growth, and he'd argue that growth costs money. This is a big issue we have to solve, that we can't have municipalities increasing DCs because it's not conducive to affordable housing. We had that cost to a house, a $22,000 house in Quinte West charge will go directly on that house, which makes it less affordable for those that need it. So we have to figure out ways to build more that costs less, to make sure we're getting the infrastructure into cities. More densification, unfortunately, that's going to be the case going forward. Finding ways to make growth pay for growth, because if we see an increase of DCs or municipalities who can't afford to build homes, that's just as bad as the other things that are causing this housing crisis.
Well, that was great. Thank you. Jill, did you want to ask the next question? Or I can go ahead if you want. I've got a bunch of them that have been submitted. So
I'm good, I think, here. Give me just 1 second to open that window. So kind of following our time in Halifax last week with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we have a question around the need for, I'm sorry, my screen is just, okay. So we have a question for both, actually, but it's specific around VIA, I think. So from Beck Lawat, we produce windows for the transportation market, including passenger rail. And this is referring to tariffs, I believe. The U.S. has long had Buy America requirements, which are more broadly applied now than ever due to the Inflation Reduction Act. Canada rarely, if ever, has Canadian content rules, despite a robust supply base in Canada. The latest VIA trains did not have any Canadian content requirements, and they were built in California. Procurements that do have content requirements have different rules every time. Will you work to develop a Canadian content framework so that public servants can easily apply these requirements to future tenders?
Okay, that's a my question for sure, and nice to hear from our friends there that they do a great job. It's a great manufacturing factory here in the Quinte region. Yes, it was making until recently all the windows for Via Rail and for our trains that we want on time, and we want that stop still in Quinte West. But 1,000%, Buy America. The Americans have got it for years, that they know that if they're going to have good companies that are going to grow up in scale and be bigger in America, that they have to have procurement policies that allow the government, when they're buying anything from defense, which they're really good at, to the procurement as a whole, that they are buying from American factories and helping American workers. We are not doing that in Canada. For our defense, we're not going to Canadian procurement. Everyone knows that during the pandemic, if you were buying a mask, 98% of them are coming from China. We look even at Canada, when we buy sugar, we're buying quite a bit of it from Brazil, a nation we don't have a good trading agreement with. So we have to get back to the basics. Yes, procurement for helping Canadian companies, especially in defense. And we have a lot of defense companies that end up here in the region because of CFB Trenton, but as a whole, our defense department always will buy elsewhere, never looks first to Canada. That needs to be something we change right away. When it looks to the government, we have a massive spend. It's also our R&D that we have to be buying and investing into Canadian companies and ensuring that we're buying and investing in Canadian IP. So that's a big part of that. And then, it is a big thing with CUSMA that when it comes to Buy Canada, that we have to do better for our Canadian businesses to ensure that if we're buying something from the Americans, they're buying something from us. We have to wean ourselves off of China, that we have a $50 billion deficit with them. We're looking to nations to augment that. That's going to be South Korea. And of course, we have a great relationship with Belleville and Gungpo. Working with them, I'm sure I'll be over there at some point. We have Japan and we have the Philippines as well as Vietnam to work closer with. And I know the chambers, you've taken some trips over there as well. So we have some good relationship building happening here as a whole. But yes, 1000%. It's not that, we don't believe in free trade, but the world is becoming increasingly more protectionist. The Americans have become increasingly more protectionist. We have to work with our Americans. They do 80% of the trade with us. It's an incredible partner. Every nation in the world would love to switch places with us, but that means also protecting Canadian businesses and ensuring that I know when we look to Duarte as well in Prince Edward County, the American travelers, tourism as a whole have dropped. We're not seeing, Americans coming back to visit Canada. We need to see that increase again. That means working with them and ensuring that we have better provisions to get Americans over the border. Obviously, security is a big concern, but if we have Americans, and perhaps it may not mean, it used to be we didn't need a passport if it was someone who had a different clearance, but we need to work out how we get Americans back to Canada and back to this region.
Ryan, as a follow-up to that, in your role, with international trade, I did receive a question from one of my members, and it says, with Brexit completed, there's growing interest in the potential of CANZUK, which is Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, or even expanding to CANZUKUS, which includes the US. And given our close Five Eyes intelligence alliance, what are the prospects for establishing a comprehensive free trade agreement among these nations to bolster economic growth? And is this government actively pursuing this as a strategy?
Yeah, what we look at it as is all trade is on the table. The number one most important trade relationship with the Americans. We just have so much we've lost in the last 6 years and when CUSMA was renegotiated. So that's the number one relationship. And after that, we have so much leverage. We say in Canada, we're at third base and we act like we hit a triple, right? We have all the natural resources any country could ever think of. And I always think that, when I was with the city of Belleville, we went to Gungpo, and when we were down there, we went to the DMZ, and they had what was called a unification ceremony where they were talking about South and North Korea. And not to compare us at all, because there's no real big comparison except for this fact. If we had a trade agreement, a better one with the Americans, we have all the natural resources. We have the third largest oil reserve in the world. We have the second largest LNG, liquid natural gas or natural gas reserve in the world. We have all the critical minerals, every critical and rare earth mineral that we need for electric batteries in the future. We have them. China has all the refined ones right now, but we have the future critical minerals. We then have incredible institutions creating great things. We have incredible small businesses. We already have an integrated market with the US and Canadian automotive manufacturers market. It's all there. And then we have all these other countries that we can work with. We have a bad trading relationship with China. We can work out those, we can augment that trading relationship with the rest of those nations. And we're having a tricky time right now with the UK. And I could get into the weeds. This could be an hour on our trading pitfalls. One of them is the supply management. And I say, I'm also with competition. And I say, I believe in all competition in Canada except for supply management. And the only reason is it would cost $100 billion to get rid of supply management. We have to figure out a way to help our farmers and ensure that grows. But Suzanne, you're right. That is completely on the table. I believe we have, and especially I'll leave this last part. The biggest threat we have to the Western world right now is the BRICS nations. There was a meeting 2 days ago where they are coming up with their BRICS currency. We know what's happening in Ukraine. The message yesterday with the former ambassadors, as well as with these policymakers around US-Canada trade yesterday, was the fact that we have not had the sense of urgency that is the actually reality in the world. North Korea has troops right now out in Russia training to enter Ukraine. We know that war is going on. We know what's happening in the Middle East. But Iran, who is backed by China and Russia, may enter the war with Israel, and that's going to be a big problem as a whole. We have to be more realistic of the fact for security, and our goal in Canada is to protect the Arctic. We have to be able to get to the north and secure that piece of North America, but also work closer with the Americans with security as a whole. When it comes to those relationships, AUKUS or CANCUS or anything else that'll come out will be security first. It'll be us working with our NORAD and NATO members. That's how trade will start. And obviously, that's where we bring in our critical minerals, our small businesses that work in defense, CFB Trenton as a whole, which is a critical component to how NORAD and the US and Canadian security trade relationship works. Those all have to come into components. So all of that comes into how we do our future trade deals.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in quickly in terms of the production happening on our shores and in Ontario. We've done some important steps as it relates to manufacturing in Ontario, including $44 billion worth of automotive investment, particularly for electric vehicle production. 6 of the top manufacturers in the world are now being made in Ontario, which is hugely important. And we also noticed during the pandemic that the vast majority of the PPE that we needed was all made outside of Ontario. With an investment that we're just about to finalize now, we're currently about 85%. We'll be at 94% of the PPE that we would need in the event of another pandemic would be made in Ontario, which is a huge benefit, not only for employment and GDP in Ontario, but also because things that are made in Ontario are de facto better for the environment. Because if we're making these things in developing nations that are burning coal, that don't have the hydroelectric that we have here, it's worse for the environment. So by nearshoring productivity, by making things in Canada, and particularly in Ontario with our highly efficient, highly clean electrical grid, it's much better for the environment, it's better for employment, it's better for taxation, it's better for workers, and it's better for everyone. So we've really tried to spearhead that in Ontario. Still more work to do, but anything that we can make here, we should be making here, and we're going to push forward on that.
Great. Tyler, I do have a question for you. And it says your predecessor, Todd Smith, was asked to improve transit plans connecting Quinte West to the Greater Toronto area. With many daily commuters, what steps are you taking to enhance public transit options? Are there specific plans or timelines in place?
Absolutely, and thank you very much for the question. And we have seen a 15% increase in weekly transit across the GO system, including through the Lakeshore East Line to Oshawa. Weekend service will happen twice as often, with 15-minute service in the afternoon and evening. I do have to give a huge shout out to Ryan and his advocacy as it relates to those early morning VIA trains that have been restored. That was a great move by the federal government, and we appreciate his leadership on that. And that's actually how my wife and children were able to make it to my swearing in on Monday. So a very important link there. And we're also seeing that this Ford government is committed to building more transit all across Ontario. $70 billion investment, the largest expansion of public transit anywhere in North America. But we do need to make that connection between Quinte West and Oshawa, getting us hooked into the GO line. We're working on a 10-year MTO plan for Eastern Ontario. And there's a commitment to work with the federal government on high-speed rail as well. And we've also, as I'm sure everybody on this call has heard, we're very passionate and very focused on widening the 401, making it 6 lanes all the way from Toronto right through to Cornwall, because there is terrible congestion. I was coming home even at 8:30 at night last night, absolutely stop and go all the way through Oshawa, through Cobourg, even into the Brighton area. By widening the 401, we will be able to cut down on commute times. And it's billions of dollars in lost revenue in terms of people stuck on the highway, idling, not being able to make it to work, not being able to get the products to market. So very important that we do widen that 401, make it easier for people to get from this area into Toronto and vice versa. But those connections are going to be key as well. And we'll be looking forward to that in the 10-year MTO plan. And I'll certainly be advocating to make sure that more of that $70 billion of public transit money makes it to our area and creates those links that are necessary to get people moving, keep people working, and keep our economy going.
Tyler, I have another question for you that was submitted. And this comes from the County Foundation's new Vital Signs report. And accessing childcare is a barrier to employment, as you're probably aware of. The county is currently facing a daycare crisis. Our local hub child and family care center now has a wait list of 424 children, up from a decade ago when there was no wait list. The current capacity for registered full-time childcare is 174 spaces, which is constrained by staffing and space limitations. What is the province, or what can the province do to address this?
Well, thank you, Duarte. I really appreciate that question. And it certainly is a concern. It's something that my family had to grapple with as well when we were, we had 3 children in a 2-year period. We were deciding, would all of us be able to work? Would someone have to stay home? And that's a challenge that faces a lot of families in this area. And through the Canada-wide Early Learning Development Fund, what we've seen is that they're trying to hit $10 a day. And this is the federal government's signature policy position, but it's chronically underfunded. So we've been made sure that we're capping fees as of March 2025 at $22 a day to make it more affordable. But we do need to be able to open more of these spaces. And there is currently a prohibition on using this funding for-profit childcare centers, which would be able to open up about 86,000 new spaces across the province, which would significantly help to ease the constraint that we're having, even in this area, if we could get more for-profit providers on market as well. And I think that, sometimes for-profit seems to be a bit of a dirty word, but provided that they can offer high-quality early childcare services at a price point that people can afford, I think that's what people are most concerned about, because then that frees them up to participate in the economy, to get back to work, to bring in more income for their family, and ultimately, have a better future for themselves and their families. So we're going to be pushing forward on that, trying to lobby the federal government to make sure that we are opening up every possible space available to get more children into those early learning programs that they need, and helping to reduce the wait list, like you said, in Prince Edward County, 400 plus kids waiting. And that not only impacts the parents because they're not able to get to work, but also impacts the children because they're not getting that quality early learning, which we know is hugely preventative down the line in terms of issues like crime rates, in terms of education, getting your high school diploma, getting your college diploma, getting those higher level skills. It starts young, and we need to be making all the investments that we can, and we'll continue to push the federal government on that, making sure we get the best deal for Ontario and that we open those spots.
Great, thank you. I just got a couple more of these submitted questions, and then I think we'll probably be able to start going to the ones in the chat. So the next 2 questions are actually around international students. The first one is asking about the impact of these recent changes to that program, and it's just asking, with these recent changes to international student policies, are raising concerns for universities and colleges that rely on this revenue. How will the government mitigate the financial impact on educational institutions and protect local students from potential budget cuts?
I'll start from the top level, and then this is under Tyler's purview. But I can talk obviously about the cuts and what happens, because the federal government does set the targets and then allows the students in. The students have been amazing for Bay of Quinte. There's no question. I have some students working for me in my business. I think almost every business you go around town, you can see just how that has been a great impact on our labor market. As of last year, still, we had 3,000 jobs vacant in the manufacturing sector. In Canada, we had 1 million vacant skilled jobs 2 years ago. That's dived down now. And that's a sign of the economy contracting a bit to under 400,000. So that's an issue that we've seen, and because of that issue, I heard for the first time this summer, because I hadn't heard it really before then, that our youth especially couldn't find employment the youth employment in Canada jumped almost 20%. That's how big that impact has been. So that's the result, of course, of a labor market where we have more workers than, of course, vacancies in the job market, and that's bad news. So obviously, then federal government looked at tightening that and tightening the number of students, and Loyalist College benefited from that. The number I saw, I think, from a video a couple months ago, is we gained 4,000% in terms of international students in Belleville, and we know the impact of that on housing and everything else. And we've been very vocal to say that is an impact, and that makes a difference. We also know that Loyalist College has made a lot of money on that. They had massive surpluses, and then they're spending that money. The cap, I know that had to happen, and I've talked to Mark Kirkpatrick quite a bit about that. It does have an impact, but Loyalist is still okay. They're still sitting, I believe, in a surplus, and we still have 2,500 international students in the programs. The one side, of course, that is for housing, and we talk about housing. The other thing I've been vocal about in the past is we have to do a better job at doing job employer surveys. I know I've had surveys go out from the chambers. The chambers have participated in trying to do that. We're not doing a well enough job, I believe, in ensuring that we're knowing the vacant jobs that are in this region, specifically in manufacturing and other sectors, and that perhaps Loyalist College is doing a better job at ensuring those programs produce graduates that go into those programs. That's the value proposition of the college, is to ensure that it's filling job vacancy in this region so we have maximum employment, and to ensure then that especially those students and those people who grow up here and would like a job can get an education that gets them to a job that pays them a higher paycheck. 1,000%, that is the value proposition. We have to work on that a little better. Then when we have those vacancies we can't fill locally, we can't get the students through our programs. Of course, we augment that by immigration and by those skilled talents that we can get from other countries. 1,000%. I think if we get better at that, we get better at ensuring then that we have maximum employment. And God forbid we have a recession or a downturn where we have to create jobs, and we have to create jobs at a time which I haven't seen. I think the last time we were in really that predicament was in the early 80s. We don't want to be back there, because that's a harder proposition. Then we're really going to need Loyalist and the businesses to work together, first to create employment, but then to create the opportunities to get people into those jobs. So I think we are on the same page. I think in terms of where we need to be with immigration and how we have to limit that to somehow housing, but to ensure we're not cutting it right off. We need immigrants in this region. It's been great for this area, but we have to really make sure we're doing a better job of tying that to employment, but most of all, and providing opportunities to ensure that the people that grow up here, the youth that we want to keep here, are getting an education that gets them jobs that pays a good paycheck. So hopefully they can afford a home one day.
Tyler, anything you'd like to add to that from a provincial perspective?
Absolutely, and this is squarely an issue that came from the federal government but impacts us provincially. So I appreciate Ryan doing the lead in on that. And Ontario was very disappointed with the federal government that there was not greater consultation on this issue with the province, because many post-secondary schools and communities rely upon those international students. As we know, they pay a much higher fee. So from a revenue perspective for the colleges, it was a big benefit that now many of them have lost, but we tried to mitigate the impact in a number of different ways. For instance, given the targets that were put out, Ontario prioritized allocations for colleges and universities, about 96% of the permits, and significantly reduced international allocations for private career colleges. The applications will be prioritized for high demand areas such as health, skilled trades, hospitality, and childcare. And those won't apply to ratios. International students can't exceed about 55% of 2023 first-year domestic levels. And to help mitigate the impact of the loss of revenue on colleges, Ontario committed to a one-time $1.3 billion investment in the sector. About $900 million of that goes to stabilize operations, $167 million to capital projects and equipment, and $100 million to support STEM, $65 million for research and innovation, $23 million for mental health, and $15 million to help post-secondary institutions find efficiencies, which has also been very important in light of the changes to their revenue stream. Anything they can do to become more efficient, to stabilize their operations, to help with capital projects and equipment, goes a long way in terms of helping them not only survive, but continue to thrive. Through conversations that I've had with Mark Kirkpatrick, one of the things that they have seen is that levels of domestic student enrollment has gone up substantially. which they're very happy about. And I think that part of that certainly has to be credited to the great work that Loyalist College is doing in terms of being responsive to the marketplace and creating programs for jobs that actually exist and that will be needed in the future. We're seeing the significant investments they've been making to nursing programs, to PSW programs, all of that sort of healthcare human resource, which is desperately needed in our hospitals and desperately needed throughout long-term care and many other avenues of the health system. They've been very good at pivoting and delivering programs for people that people actually want and need. And so that has boosted their numbers, allowed them to stay competitive, and allowed them to keep their books relatively balanced in this time of turmoil, which was caused by the federal government capping the students internationally and not communicating that well with the province. So we're doing all that we can, and we will continue to not raise fees for hardworking Ontario students and families, and we'll keep the tuition capped. Now, I know that has been a bit of a struggle for some of the colleges and universities, but that's something that was really necessary to make sure that students could actually afford to go get an education that would then lead them to better job prospects and allow them to earn the type of money that they need to keep their head above water in this current economy, to be able to buy homes and to be able to plan for their future families and making sure that their kids can eventually go to college and university as well. So there's a number of things we're doing. We were disappointed that there wasn't more consultation, but we just don't sit around and be disappointed. We get to work and make sure that we're delivering the supports that colleges and universities need to keep thriving and keep delivering on great programs.
Okay, it's all really good, important stuff, and we have been working on the international student impact issues, hourly wages, access to work, all of those things for a very long time. So appreciate that. I'm going to switch gears, literally, here quickly, and we're going to talk a little bit about provincial highways and regard to the winter season on major freeways. Cold weather quickly approaching. The inevitable is bound to repeat itself as it has done year after year. The occurrences of damage and hazardous driving conditions caused by flying ice and snow falling from commercial vehicles has increased drastically with regard to personal injury and damage to vehicles. I have one of our members who is curious to know what steps the provincial government is taking to address the issue and what those steps might entail. I believe there's actually some regulation around it, and I think this may be a little bit more about enforcement.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And certainly this is something that the MTO is very focused on, because you're right, those incidents have been increasing, particularly in the winter season, with snow falling off of vehicles and causing damages. So enforcement is needed, and we've made significant investments in enforcement to make sure that people are being held accountable, that trucks are being kept clean, and that we're not providing unsafe road conditions, as well as improving the infrastructure underlying. So making sure that our roads and highways are in better condition, particularly for winter driving, so that people aren't being put in unsafe situations. As many have seen, we did increase the speeds on Highway 401 and most 400 series highways, because automotive technology has significantly improved since those speed limits were first put in place. And it does help create better flow of goods, better flow of people for commuting, and just results in a system that seems to work a lot better for most people. But now that the speed is higher, we have to consider what other impacts that might cause, particularly in the winter season with snow coming off of vehicles. And I'll be happy to work with Minister Sarkaria, MTO, and enforcement to make sure that we're keeping people safe on the roadways, particularly in the winter season.
Thank you. Do you know why people are only going 90 now in a 110?
I don't, we gave them a little extra room and they slowed down, Maybe it's like a reverse psychology. If we raise it to 150, people would drive 40.
Tyler, I have another one for you from the chat. What steps are being taken to improve the Landlord and Tenant Board Act, or board, to create a more investor-friendly environment and encourage investors to invest in the region rather than moving to the States?
Well, thank you very much. And this is a really important question, because we have seen huge backlogs at the Landlord-Tenant Board for quite some time. So we've invested significantly in hiring more adjudicators, making sure that the system prioritizes the non-payment of rent, because that was a situation where landlords were often going for months and months at a time, and even over a year, without being paid the rents that they had, dutifully earned on their properties. And we've even seen scenarios We had a discussion about this the other day from a member in Brampton who said that he'd been reached out to by a number of residents who had bought properties as investment properties. They had seen non-payment of rent go on for over a year. They had to actually sell their primary homes to make sure they were able to continue to live, and ended up renting apartments and cashing in on that equity because of all the lost income from the rental properties. And then when the people finally got out of there, they left hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage, which again ended up in that particular case, the owner had to foreclose on the home. So we need to make sure that we are processing people through the system faster, making sure that we have enough adjudicators in place, and putting that priority on issues that relate to rental non-payment and also damages that are left on the properties. Because, you know, I think that sometimes the view is that landlords are wealthy and that they should be able to shoulder the burden. And, you know, although I think that there is some of that occurs, a lot of smaller landlords and, you know, retail level landlords are really just doing this as a additional source of income. Maybe they're also small business owners, and this is a step towards their retirement planning. And so when they're not able to collect rent, when the equity in their homes that they're renting out is being lost due to damages, it has a profound impact on those families. And it's something that in some cases, like the member from Brampton highlighted the other day, is something that those homeowners aren't able to recover from. So we've made those investments. I was talking to the Attorney General about this the other day. The case backlog has come down significantly. I think it's been about 30% over the last year. We're going to keep driving that caseload down, keep prioritizing those non-payment cases, getting them through the system faster, and making sure that it works better for everybody, but particularly on the side of investors, because if people don't want to invest in renting out homes, that is an important segment of the housing market that often gets missed. Is a lot of people can't afford the down payment to go buy a home. They need to be in that rental space. But if investors don't feel comfortable investing in it, those homes don't become available for rental. And what people often end up doing is they buy the home, they hold it empty and wait for the appreciation value as opposed to the rental income, because they're so concerned about what might happen if they don't get paid or if damages are incurred. So we are all over this issue. The caseloads are coming down, things are getting through faster, and we're going to continue to deliver results in that category.
Thank you.
So switching gears again, we got lots of different topics. I have one about physician recruitment and retention. So, you know, what should the federal and provincial governments be doing to help municipalities with their physician recruitment and retention efforts in rural communities like the Bay of Quinte? And I know that is definitely a regional wide issue here.
Yeah, you know, the stat I saw the other day was, you know, it's over 25% of Canadians don't have a family doctor. I think it's growing. They're going to believe it's going to grow up to 40% by 2030, which is insane. And we've talked about this a long time. Obviously, when I was a Belleville City Councillor, I pushed for nurse practitioners, and I'm so happy to see that the province has funded nurse practitioners in this region and including them, I think, in their physician recruitment. Karen Post is doing an amazing job for Belleville, as all the other cities are, in recruiting doctors, but it's not enough. You know, we know the stats that old doctors who are, I don't say old, but older doctors who are retiring normally had about up to 5,000 patients, and new doctors coming in only take about 1,500. So it takes almost 3 doctors to replace a retired doctor, which means we were doctors and nurse practitioners. And the other problem I know that's a concern for Tyler's government is the cost of that. Healthcare is one of their, if not the highest line item in the provincial government's budget.
85 billion.
Yeah, it's a big one, and that went from, I think in the 90s it was only 25 billion a year. It was a lower number. It's exceedingly high, and to pay for that, but we do need primary health care, and we have to have that. Our solution, Pierre's solution, is a Blue Seal program that, and this is part of my, also under my hat, is interprovincial trade, that if we have doctors or nurses trained in other provinces, we need to find ways to, within 60 days, get those doctors or nurses accredited here in the province. That's number one. 2, if we have doctors or nurses trained in other countries, we need to find accreditation and get a testing program that gets, within 60 days, their skill set recognized by the province. And that's going to be working with the province and with Tyler itself and with labor in Ontario, much as if they've done in Alberta, to try to get those accreditations sped up. That's interprovincial trade. That's going to be trade deals that we do with the provinces. And we know that that's going to come with increased healthcare transfers from the federal government. The provinces have all went to the federal government to ask for more healthcare funding. Obviously, if we have to generate more revenue in Canada to get that funding, but we're committed to ensuring that we have out of the box practices that gets more doctors, more nurse practitioners, more primary healthcare workers to the provinces and to our cities. I think the number we had just for Belleville, this was 2 years ago, is we need 30 doctors. That's not including specialists. And we know that when you go to the emergency wards, they need doctors as well. So it's a big problem. We have to work on out of the box solutions that help the province fix that problem, because it's something we have to work on hard on.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And I couldn't agree more. And this is something in 2022, when I was a municipal council, I certainly ran on. Both the prospect of hiring a doctor recruiter, bringing more RPNs into the system, and then also being more creative with the deals that we were making through our doctor recruitment fund. Because sometimes, the staggered payment over 6 years wasn't what people were needing to get their practices open. They wanted more upfront. They wanted a shorter term. So being more flexible with those agreements was something that was very important to me. We have done that in Belleville, and coupled with the great work that Karen Post is doing as our doctor recruiter, I believe she was on track to hire at least 9 new physicians this year, which is tremendous and goes a long way into that number of 30 physicians that are needed that Ryan highlighted. But in other areas, we have significant problems, even across this riding. When I was door knocking in Frankfurt, they used to have 3 doctors in Frankfurt. They now have no doctors in Frankfurt. And a lot of people are moving to this area in retirement. They're getting here. They love the community. They love everything about the area. But then they realize that they can't get a family doctor. And so they're having to keep their doctor in Oshawa, Ajax, Orangeville, or wherever else they may have come from because they're not able to find one here. And so the Ontario government is incredibly invested in doctor recruitment. We do have the best attachment rate in Canada, almost 85%. But certainly there's no resting on our laurels, because we know that means that 15% of Ontario, just over 2.5 million people, is in need of a family doctor. So we created 700 new medical residency seats at schools, 260 undergrad, 449 postgraduate seats, which will help get more doctors educated in the province. I don't like to throw back to the previous Liberal government, but in 2009, they did cut 50 seats in Ontario, which means over the past 14 years, we could have had 700 more doctors educated in Ontario. And as you know, you can't build a doctor overnight. It takes a long time to get through the schooling. So all of these investments that we're making now and that we've made over the past 6 years are still just coming through the system and showing results now. So we are hoping that we'll be able to cut down that backlog by adding those new seats, by building 2 new medical schools, one in York, one in Brampton. 60% of those new seats are dedicated to family medicine, because that's an area where we're really seeing the pressure points. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, when we talk to doctors, we had a number of doctors come to Belleville Council and discuss with us a few months ago. Even just in this last week, I met with the Ontario Medical Association in Queen's Park. One of the biggest issues that family doctors face is the amount of paperwork that they're required to do on a weekly basis. It's up to about 19 hours of paperwork. And when you consider the fact that they bill OHIP about $37 for 15 minutes of patient time, every minute that they're spending on paperwork is a non-billable minute as far as OHIP is concerned. And so not only do we need to negotiate those OHIP rates and try to get that up, which I'll certainly be working on, but we're also making a situation where, because of the amount of bureaucratic paperwork that they have to do, about half of their 40-hour week, they're not actually able to see patients, which cuts down on their earning potentials. And a lot of these doctors that go into family medicine effectively end up being small business owners. So they have to worry about paying their staff. They have to worry about hiring a secretary or a receptionist. They have to hire nurses. They have to pay the building costs. They have to pay the rental costs. And that is something that drives a lot of people out of family medicine, because these young doctors that are graduating often want to be a locum. So they come into a community. They might be there for a few months or a short period of time. They earn a tremendously high wage. They have very little overhead expenses. And then they move to another community and do the same thing for 6 months. And you can't blame the doctors for that. The challenge is the burdens that we put on family doctors through the paperwork, through the necessity to be a small business owner, and through the way that their fees are scheduled through OHIP. And so we'll continue to work on all those fronts as well to make it more attractive for people to become family doctors, because we should not have a situation where people go to school for that long and incur the debt that they do and become a family doctor, get out there in the community and realize that they're making substantially less money than they would to work in an emergency room, to work at a local hospital, or to become a locum. So that's one of the major challenges. We also need to invest in other solutions for primary care. This is something that we did with pharmacies. 87% of pharmacies are now able to treat the top 19 medical ailments, which keeps people out of hospital waiting rooms and helps people who aren't able to have a family doctor get their needs met and make sure that they're getting the treatment that they need as well. But we are laser focused on this. As Ryan alluded to, healthcare funding is a massive part of Ontario's budget. It's about 42.5% of our $203 billion budget at $85 billion. And that's up 40% from 6 years ago. So we have made significant strides and significant investments, but we're still waiting for some of those investments to pay off, because you can't grow a 50-year-old tree by planting 50 trees today and waiting a year. It takes time to build a doctor. It takes time for them to go through school. And some of these investments will still take another couple of years to pay off, but we are headed in the right direction. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that people have family doctors and access to primary care in Ontario.
That's great news. And as someone who just lost their family doctor for the second time in the space of 3 years, that's exciting to know. Now, mind you, there are some access to teledoc and stuff is also probably more helpful than people realize. But I will say that this conversation about mental health and addictions still, I think, kind of traces itself back to a lack of primary health care, and not having somebody who knows who you are and follows you through your journey is a critical issue when it comes to kind of identifying problems as they start. Anyway, that's my little soapbox on that one. I do have a good question for you. And anybody who has been involved with politics has probably heard from Peter Coy about roundabouts, because it is his passion. And we would love to know whether or not we can actually, we're going to probably move forward with this, because many of the major intersections that are involved in Belleville in particular that get engaged with issues around blocking traffic and traffic calming and movement of cars are provincially managed highways, such as Highway 2 and 62. Any thoughts about how we would move a resolution forward on that to suggest that the provincial government should seriously consider roundabouts as a solution with improving intersection management?
Yeah, thank you, Jill. And as is a provincial issue, I'm happy to jump in first on that one. I happen to be a big proponent of roundabouts as well. I have to admit, the first couple of times I went through one, there was a bit of apprehension. There is a learning curve, and I think that that's something that people will have to adapt to. But there are a lot of studies that show that it is much more efficient at moving traffic through, significantly reduces the number of incidents at those crossings where cars are colliding with each other and causing both damage to vehicles, but more importantly, injuries and loss of human life. So I would be looking forward to move forward on those, on roundabouts, advocating to the MTO and to Minister Sarkaria to build that more into the plan as we look at, about $190 billion of infrastructure investment over the coming years. We should be building in a way that is safer, that is more efficient, that better moves people and traffic around. And I think roundabouts are a great solution for that. So I'll be happy to bring that to him. I'm sure he's heard it before, but we can add our voice to the chorus and make sure that we're heard on that issue, and that more roundabouts are being put in. And as soon as you said roundabouts, I thought, I bet Peter Coy is in the chat. I know Peter has been very focused on this for a number of years. He used to come into the bike store and talk to me about roundabouts as well when I was a city councillor. And absolutely, I'd be happy to bring that forward and to see more of those throughout our community.
Thanks very much. I do have one other question that I think was kind of at the very beginning. Any ETA on the telecom competition? And that might be more federal.
I think that's a Ryan one.
Yeah. 2 years after we get elected, I think we'd be able to get that in place in terms of getting it finished. It's gonna be tough. When you're fighting oligopolies and monopolies, you're fighting big conglomerates. There's also structural pieces of that. Look, there was a piece about the Eorn and how they finished 22 towers the other day. You know, the thing about technology too, it's interesting. We have more towers in Quinte we've ever had before, but the thing about 5G is you used to have 4G could be this far apart, but 5G has to be this far apart. So you need more towers anyhow. And it's why when I drive to Ottawa, I dropped cell phone coverage 3 times on my way to Ottawa on the 401 and 416, which is terrible. This is our major corridor between two of our most populous cities. We shouldn't be losing there. And if you go north, good luck, right? So, you know, it's going to take time. You know, there's a couple big, I believe in incrementalism, and I think there's a couple big changes we can make on that one, but it'll be fighting with the CRTC and some other, and those big conglomerates. It's the same with the banks. With open banking this week, and we're trying to push forward this legislation, the banks came together. There's a program that will be needed in order to imagine this, so the banks can share your information, but it's all standardized. The banks unrolled one this week that they own, that they control, and they will make money off of. And obviously the financial tech groups are not happy with that. We can't have the big conglomerates owning the way we do things. We have to have it as a free market. All of that takes time, but the difference is there'll be a big fight. We'll know who to fight, and we'll be fighting on behalf of Canadians. But we hope that definitely within the first term that we get things changed, and we can move things along, and at the same time create Canadian jobs. That's what competition does. It gives more options to Canadians, but then creates more companies, and hopefully we have Canadian companies fighting. Last piece I'll leave it at is the big one that we're really tracking right now is low orbit satellite. Elon Musk owns the space right now with Starlink, and I know a lot of people now that have Starlink. Amazon's launching their competition in the fall, and then there's a Canadian version called Telesat that might be there. That's going to be the future of the space, towers and wireless. But I think we're getting away from running cable last mile. It's just too cumbersome. By the time we run that mile and that cable in a rural area, then the technology is obsolete. So I think, especially for all those in the county that live in the middle, and the county is notorious for driving around the county and losing cell phone coverage.
Yep.
They want that best coverage. That's going to be probably low orbit satellite and wireless or towers that solves that. So we're figuring that out as well. But we need it. That's the future, obviously.
Yes, and I think I would strongly advocate for that transition. After seeing high-speed internet has been on our list for so long. Forget about the competition issue, but it just doesn't seem to move the needle because it's another pole, another tower, another satellite, another lower link place. And yeah, satellite has got to be where that investment goes. I got to say that's the way to go. Thank you.
And competition, I'll just leave it with, we have KOS, who's been operating in this region for a while, especially in the county. They've lost their ability, and they've been told to shut their towers down at a time when we don't have coverage. And these are little changes that have just shut out competition. You know, we could have little small companies, if they were allowed access to it, buy and resell spectrum, and they just have access to towers. Imagine we were allowing companies to build their own towers, and sometimes towers are just something on top of a building, and then resell that. And they just have to operate the retail end of that. Those are the little changes that will really make a big difference. KOS is one of those members that was doing that. We had another company, Tenacity, in the county who was trying to do that. You know, these are rules that have just protected oligopolies. And again, when we see towers being built, who's making those announcements? It's the same company making the announcement that's giving the same terrible service that makes me drop my cell phone coverage 3 times on the way to Ottawa. So we're going to create more competition and make sure that that doesn't happen in the future.
No, I still have a 250-foot tower next to my house.
Well, you know what? We have come to the end of our time. It's been really great having both of you here with us today. And there's a few questions we didn't get to in the chat, but I think overall we were able to cover quite a wide range of topics. Like I've said a few times just lately when I'm talking to people, is business issues and social issues seem to be really intertwined right now. It's hard to separate them because housing and mental health and all of those like doctors, it's all connected. They're all business issues these days. Tyler, I've been asked to make sure that I ask you in particular, will you continue to support Trenton Memorial Hospital?
Absolutely. Love Trent Memorial Hospital. That was a hospital, as well as Prince Edward County Memorial Hospital, that were slated to be closed under the previous Liberal government. The Doug Ford PC government provided the stable funding to keep both of those hospitals open. Not only that, we also provided $8.9 million to go towards a new renovated emergency room there to provide better quality care closer to home, as well as a $200 million investment to Prince Edward County Memorial Hospital for their new build, which is going to be made out of mass timber, which is significantly more eco-friendly to do than concrete. So we're very much looking forward to that. But absolutely, I look forward to supporting all of our local hospitals, making sure that we have the high quality care that we need close to home. And I'll leave it at that.
Wonderful. Well, on behalf of the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce members, I would just like to thank both of you for your time. And I'm sure I'll just pass it over to my colleagues now for their closing remarks. Thank you.
You want me to?
Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah, go ahead, Dort.
Well, you guys are always welcome in beautiful Prince Edward County, of course, anytime. But thank you for taking your time today. I know you have really busy schedules, and for answering questions from your constituents, and obviously during Small Business Week, small business owners. So thank you. It's been an incredible week. My first Small Business Week as the PEC Chamber CEO. So it's been very exciting, and the roundtable is always certainly a highlight. So thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, thank you again on behalf of the Belleville Chamber of Commerce and the whole team of the Bay of Quinte Region chambers who unite during this week and in general when it comes to advocacy issues. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being accessible. Thank you for providing us the support that the Bay of Quinte Region needs.
Thank you. And I was going to leave with the note, you know, you have now an MP and MPP who have both been small business owners, who understand small businesses, who understand the plight of it's not just easy, you know, it's the risk, it's the reward, it's what builds and sustains this economy. So thank you to all you all do. Thank you for the risks you take. We're here to fight for you as we've been small business owners, and we continue to be. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and likewise, thank you to all the chambers for putting on this event. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the Quinte Business Achievement Awards tonight. I know I'll see Ryan there. I hope to see the rest of you there as well. Fantastic event to honor some of the great businesses that we have in our community. And it is a struggle, but there's a lot of joy to it as well. As I said, small business is a great way to outlet your passion, you know, the things that you love to do, and then also create great value for the community, employ some people, and really help to contribute to the vibrancy of the community through small business, whether it's restaurants, retail shops, service providers. There's so many great things going on with small business in our region. Really happy to be able to be a part of it and to support it at the provincial level. And thank you all for taking the time to listen to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.